it was the best man at the moment he was called up to give a speech. This was told to me by Tom Ruprecht, by the way, a writer at the Letterman show. So this is really his story, and it was his friend, and I don't know the specifics of it beyond that. But basically, the best man is called up to give his speech, introduced, and he just walks out to the middle of the dais, turns around to the bride and says, "Look me in the eye and tell me you love him more, and I will walk away." And then he just walked off, and then turned around and came back to give his speech. Now, I would guess it played really well with a certain group, or else he wouldn't have done it. And it was, it was very, very funny. But I'm also guessing there were some aunts and uncles and grandparents, cousins, probably a lot of people who had no idea quite what that was. And so, that's kind of one of those gray areas where you go like, well, I mean, it's memorable, but, I don't know. I don't think it would be something I would attempt. It's like a experienced professional driver, do not attempt. It's one of the one of those moments.
It's like the chase scene that you see, and because it's a good joke, but you have to know your audience. You have to know that every single person in the audience does not have the complete set of information to process that joke.
Exactly, which is why, it's a risk to begin with, but then when you just think like, well, who am I possibly going to offend? And also, if you don't quite know, even if you're doing a great joke, if you don't know that everyone's going to get the joke, then you have to wonder, well, will the people who get it feel so uncomfortable about the people not getting it that they won't respond as well? So that's why I just think it's so much better to just only do material that's going to make everyone comfortable.
Well, and that's your job too. It's bringing people together. And if people have a joke where they think, maybe not the one you mentioned, but if they have a joke where they worry that everyone won't get it, that they think people would enjoy it if they were able to have all the information, that just add a little explanation. Give people a tiny bit more setup, just give them enough information so that they know, so they can add everything together and come to the same conclusion as the people who are laughing. Because also when people don't get it, they don't laugh, which sucks. And then they turn to someone next to them and go, what was that? And then you're continuing with your speech. And you've got half the audience who's now talking to probably the other half of the audience. So no one's listening to you at that point, which will slow it down. By the way, I've just noticed that my lighting, this is the kind of light in my eyes that I would have if I were pulled over. This is like a police officer level.
I think you look great. I look like I'm somewhere, I'm in a safe house.
Finally, well, have you delivered a speech at a wedding, and how did it go?
I have. I was a best man at a friend's wedding when I was about 23 years old, I guess, something like that. And I told a story. So I told a story because I was trying to think of a funny story for the speech. I let that kind of guide me. And I ended up telling a story about the groom, who was my college roommate, about just an experience in the dorm where we had a small candle going, and I reached for something. He was sitting on the couch. I was reaching for a book or something. And the next thing I knew, I felt like my elbow getting really hot. And then I looked down and I realized that was because the shorts, which I was wearing that were leaning against the candle, had caught on fire, and the flames were actually licking up from the shorts to my elbow while I was reaching for the book. And this was all with my back turned to him. So then I turned around, and the first thing he saw was me looking like one of those guys on fire from the $6 Million Man episode. It was me with flames leaping up, and I just inexplicably, this is an example of bad copy, by the way, if you're ever writing a screenplay where somebody catches on fire, but I turned around to him and I said, "Rick, I'm on fire." And then his version of leaping into action was just a dissolving into laughter. He did nothing. He just doubled over on the couch and just started laughing. And then I dove to the floor and did the sort of rolled out my shorts. So I told that story, as kind of as a funny story and as something that was kind of about our friendship and whatever else. My only regret in looking back, and then at the end of that, I said, I brought his new wife into it by saying, if you ever, if you find yourself in a tough moment or a lot of just whatever you do not look to this guy for, you're just on your own. You're going to roll on the floor and put out the fire on your own. So it was a little, it was a little roasty, but it was like he was laughing through the whole thing. And so it was a good natured story. My only regret in looking back at it was I wish I had a little bit more to say about the bride, because she was a friend as well. And so I felt like it was just weighted too much toward him and our friendship a little bit. I think I could have still told the story and maybe then included something a little bit more anecdotal about the two of them, and then balanced it a little more before I raised my glass. Well,
I'm sure. I mean, that's a great story to tell. I'm sure you could have added something to balance it, but it's funny in those situations. It would take so little. It's what you have the benefit of hindsight now, looking back, right. But it doesn't take much. But with a story like that, anytime you've got a story to tell that involves, that has a happy ending and involves someone engulfed in flames.
Right.
That's a good choice.
Well, it wasn't a happy ending. I mean, I lost most of the skin below my waist.
I've wondered why you walk so gingerly.